welcome to Shooting the Script, a video series that aims to compare written screenplays to their finished films to see how they measure up. Today we'll be looking at The Sixth Sense from 1999, which was written by M. Night Shyamalan. Just to clarify a few things before we start, I'll only be speaking about the differences that directly impact the story or the characters, otherwise this video would end up being 500 hours long and very boring to watch, which means that there's a lot of trivial differences between the film and the script that will be left out of the video. So, when you see a green box, that indicates something that is in both the script and the film, and I'm currently talking about it, whereas the orange box relates to something that is in the script but not in the film, and I'm addressing that change. And now, with that out of the way, let's get started. So, the film and the script both open in the basement, with Anna retrieving a bottle of wine. She starts to feel cold and on edge before she hurries out the basement. Now, just briefly, because this gets explained later on in the video, but when ghosts are present, it usually gets cold. I'm not going to mention it every time it happens, but just keep an eye on the screen and I'll flag it when it does. The reason I mention this is because if you've seen the film, then you know that someone else is in the house unbeknownst to the main characters, which means that there's probably also a ghost close by. That's why she was cold. This then leads to the first time the colour red is used in the film, at the 4-minute mark. Now, this isn't in the script, it's only in the finished film, but the colour red is used as a thematic motif to signal either death or if a ghost is present. There's a couple sections of dialogue here that appear in the script but are missing from the film that potentially give an insight into Malcolm's psyche and perspective. The first is at the 4-minute and 50-second mark, which is on page 2 in the script. So Malcolm has won an award for his contributions to child therapy. He then goes on to make a joke about how much the frame of the award costs. Then Anna compares him to Dr. Zeus. Then Malcolm goes on to say, "Anna, I'm serious. Serious I am, Anna." She then giggles and then looks back at the award, and then she goes on to say, "Mahogany, I'd say that cost at least a couple hundred, maybe 3. Malcolm, 3? We should hawk it, buy a CD rack for the bedroom. Anna, do you know how important this is? This is big time. I'm going to read it for you, Doctor." Malcolm, do I really sound like Dr. Zeus? Whereas in the film, the section in the orange box where Malcolm says they should hawk it and Anna responds by saying that this is the big time doesn't appear in the film. I'd love to show you it, but there's a song playing in the background that got flagged for copyright, so I can't, unfortunately. And the second is at the 5-minute 35-second mark, which is on page 3. In the script, it reads, "Anna, wow, they called you their son. Malcolm, we can keep it in the bathroom." Anna turns to Malcolm. He smiles. "Malcolm, it's not real, Anna. Some secretary wrote that up. Don't tell me you thought it was real." Anna's expression becomes serious. Malcolm, what? She just keeps staring. Malcolm, don't do the quiet thing. You know I hate that. Anna, this is an important night for us. Finally someone is recognising the sacrifices you made. Whereas in the film, again I can't play it for you, but the section in the orange box with Malcolm saying that it's not real and to not do the quiet thing isn't in the film. Firstly, I think they could have kept the line, "Don't do the quiet thing," because the entire B-plot is them not talking to each other, and she seems to be ignoring him, so I think this line would have set that up quite nicely. But at the same time, I think these lines might have made him look too dismissive and cast him in a bad light. There's being playful, then there's just being a dick. Especially the line where he says, "Don't tell me you thought that was real," as it could have come across really condescending, and this is supposed to be our first impression of him. But the main focus of these two sections of missing dialogue is Malcolm's nonchalant, cavalier attitude towards getting the award. I think they might have gotten rid of that because later on in the script, Malcolm shows that he has some insecurities about his abilities. And this could act as a precursor for that, as he may believe that he doesn't actually deserve the award, so he's trying desperately to downplay it. But this character trait isn't actually present in the film, it's only in the script. In the film, the focus is put less on him being bad at the job and having insecurities about that, and more on him probably just taking on too much work to the point that some things or people fell through the cracks. This will be addressed more as we go on, but it feeds into Malcolm's flaw, which is revealed at the 5-minute 45-second mark, which is on page 3 in the script.
That you have put everything second, including me.
That he's a workaholic who doesn't communicate with his wife. If we go back a second to Malcolm being self-deprecating and downplaying the award, him doing this trivialises Anna's sacrifices. If he put his job first, and she willingly took a back seat, and he doesn't even really care about the award, then what does that say about her? Anna clearly believes that she is second to his work and she seems to be fine with that, but it's something that has been on her mind, otherwise she wouldn't have said it. It's been bubbling under the surface, which begins to establish the themes of a lack of communication, or a miscommunication between the characters. This is their status quo, that he is a celebrated child psychologist and she is the supportive wife. We then have the inciting incident at the 6-minute and 50-second mark, which is page 5 in the script, when Anna and Malcolm see the broken window and realise that someone is maybe in the house. Now, the inciting incident is when the plot comes into contact with the characters, so it's basically when the conflict is introduced into the story. Act 1 of this film is very short, so all the big moments happen quite quickly, but I'll speak more about this in the conclusion at the end of the video, but just bear in mind that we move into the second act quite fast. The stranger is then revealed in the bathroom at the 7-minute and 30-second mark, which happens on page 5. Now, over the course of the scene, we'll see him covered in various different scars, and we'll also see a streak of white in his hair. We'll put a pin in this for now, and I'll come back to it later, but just keep a note of it. Then, there's a really interesting change between the film and the script. As the stranger walks out of the bathroom, Anna asks,
What do you want?
Whereas in the script, it's Malcolm that asks that. What do you want? I don't understand what you want. I'm not entirely sure why they would have switched this. Possibly to show Malcolm's lack of compassion at this point in the film, where he just assumed the stranger was looking for drugs, whereas Anna tries to actually engage with him, which is more in line with her character, and shows that Malcolm does need to grow, which pushes forward the themes as Malcolm didn't even try to communicate with him. So it makes more sense for Anna to say that in this moment instead of Malcolm, as the stranger is trying to remind Malcolm of who he is. At the 8-minute 40-second mark, which is page 7 in the script.
Downtown clinic. Single parent family. Possible mood disorder.
There's a very slight dialogue difference. In the film, he mentions about being a child of divorce.
You told me I was having trouble coping with my parents' divorce. You were wrong. You were wrong.
And that being an indicator of why he's struggling, but this doesn't appear in the script. I believe they added this because it links him more closely to Cole, as Cole is also going through the divorce of his parents, and Malcolm also believes that that could be an indicator of why he's struggling. Vincent then calls himself a freak for the first time at the 9-minute and 15-second mark, which is page 8 in the script.
Some people, they call me freak.
This also links him to Cole, as Cole struggles with feeling that way as well, and that word ends up becoming a trigger for Malcolm later on. This section also reinforces the themes of a breakdown in communication, as Malcolm probably wasn't taking Vincent's condition very seriously, that he was labelling him with the standard things that you would normally label a troubled child with. Whereas if he just spent more time with him and listened to him more, he might have gotten to the source of his distress. This then leads to the A-plot being introduced at the 9-minute 25-second mark, which is page 8 in the script, when Malcolm finally realises that he's speaking to Vincent.
Vincent. Vincent Gray. I do remember you.
This sets up Malcolm's failure, that he couldn't help Vincent back then, and things have just progressively gotten worse for him since, and Malcolm spends the rest of the film trying to redeem himself for this failure. That's the thing that drives the A-plot. Like I was just saying, this is linked to his flaw, that he didn't take the time to properly look after Vincent because he had too much on his plate. This also acts as the first plot point of the film, as it adds a new thematic premise, which is failing to help someone in need. So if the inciting incident is a plot element that's introduced that disrupts the main character's status quo, the first plot point is when that character decides to do something about the change. And here is when Malcolm tries to extend an olive branch. He tries to help Vincent, but the damage is done. It's too late.
I'm sorry if I didn't help you.
I feel this also acts as the refusal of the call section. This may be a bit of a reach, but after the inciting incident, there will usually be a section where the protagonist will resist whatever change the inciting incident brought. And here, I would say it's the section where Malcolm kind of half-heartedly attempts to de-escalate the situation.
But if you just let me try.
But like I say, the damage is already done. Then at the 10-minute and 10-second mark, which is page 9 in the script, it leads to the...
You just give me a chance.
The first to second act puts the character in a brand new world, a new situation that they're unfamiliar with, and this happens when Vincent shoots Malcolm and he dies. Even though he and we don't realise it, everything has changed. There's also a fade to black here. This becomes another reoccurring thing, like the red motif. The difference here is that the fade to blacks actually get paid off, and I'll mention it again when that happens, but until then, just keep an eye on the list to the side, and I'll flag them whenever they happen. This moment also introduces the stakes, that if Malcolm can't help his patients, things can turn fatal. The second act starts with Malcolm sitting on a bench reading Vincent's notes at the 11-minute mark, which is page 9 in the script. We can see that they are very similar to Cole's notes, which draws a direct parallel between the two kids. It also forwards the A-plot by introducing a chance for redemption for Malcolm. He failed Vincent, but now he has a chance to redeem himself through helping Cole. Shortly after this, we are introduced to Cole, and we can see that he has the same streak of white in his hair that Vincent did. He then puts on these oversized glasses, which we learn later belong to his dad. One of the main ghosts in the film is the lingering absence of Cole's father, which we see through him wearing his clothing throughout the film. I imagine Cole is running away here because he knows that Malcolm's a ghost. He just doesn't know if he's an angry one yet. Him trying to escape is very in line with his character at the moment, which I'll address more in a second. Then at the 12-minute and 20-second mark, which is pages 10 to 11 in the script, Cole arrives at the church, followed closely by Malcolm. The dialogue at the start of their conversation, between 13-minute 20 and 14-minute 20, which is pages 11 to 13 in the script, is basically the same. It's just shuffled round in a different order. So in the film, it starts off with them talking about the church.
In the olden days, in Europe, people used to hide out in churches.
Then they go on to speak about Cole's glasses.
Noticed your eyeglasses, they don't have any lenses in them.
Then after that, they speak about Cole's figures, speaking Latin.
What were you talking about with your soldiers when I came in? De
profundis clamo ad te domine.
Whereas in the script, they start off speaking about the glasses, then they move on to speaking about the figures and how one of them speaks Latin, and then Malcolm mentions about the church. I think shuffling the dialogue around does work better, as I feel starting off with the church is a better entry point for the conversation, as it's a more general topic, instead of going right in with the glasses, which could be quite personal. My one critique here would be, if they were going to shuffle the dialogue around, I would have put the church first, like they did in the film, then I would have had them speaking about the figures, then I'd finish this section addressing the glasses, as I feel the glasses is the most personal part, with them being linked to the dad. So Malcolm would get more and more personal as he tried to gain Cole's trust. But asking about the glasses, then ending on the figures, doesn't quite have that same effect, I don't think. There's actually a bit of dialogue missing from the film that's in the script when they're speaking about the church, which I feel is quite important, so I'm not sure why they got rid of this. So after Malcolm mentions about people seeking sanctuary, Cole asks what were they hiding from, and then Malcolm says, oh, lots of things, I suppose. Bad people for one, people who wanted to imprison them, hurt them. And then Cole says, nothing bad can happen in a church, right? I feel that's quite an important line because that's exactly what Cole's doing in the film. He seeks sanctuary in the church as a means of escape from his life because he's scared. That's the thing he needs to learn to overcome in the film, is his fear of being scared. Also, within that section of shuffled dialogue, at the 14-minute and 5-second mark, which is page 12 in the script, we see the scars on Cole's arm, which reminds us of Vincent. This introduces the stakes for Cole, that he is being harmed, and that will continue to happen unless Malcolm can help him. Malcolm has now found a way into the conversation with Cole, but there's a bit of missing dialogue that's in the script that's not in the film. So in the script, it reads, Cole, I forgot your name. Malcolm, Dr. Crow. Cole, you're a doctor. What kind? Malcolm, I work with young people who might be sad or upset or just want to talk. I try to help them figure things out. Are you a good doctor? This exchange is pretty different in the film. We go from them talking about the figure speaking Latin right to Cole asking if he's a good doctor.
All your soldiers speak Latin?
No. Just one. Are you a good doctor?
We can maybe read a little bit into that line, are you a good doctor? because Cole recognised that Malcolm doesn't know he's dead. So instead of saying, "Are you a good ghost?" it's his way of asking, "Are you one of the good ones?" as a way to try and assess who this guy is and if he can trust him. Then the conversation ends at the 14-minute and 45-second mark, which is on page 14 in the script, but it's slightly different in the script compared to the film. So in both the film and the script, as Cole leaves, he says, "I'm going to see you again, right?" And Malcolm replies, "If it's okay with you." But in the script, it keeps going. Cole thinks it over carefully. Cole, "It's okay with me." Cole and Malcolm just stare at each other. Malcolm, "And Cole, next time I won't be late for you." Cole, "Next time I won't be scared of you." Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
I'm gonna see you again, right?
If that's okay with you.
I quite like that line in the script where Cole says, "Next time I won't be scared of you," because he's generally scared of the ghosts, but now he knows that Malcolm isn't a scary, angry one, so he won't be scared of him. I think omitting lines like that does give Cole more of an anxious, withdrawn vibe, and maybe that's what they were going for. As Cole leaves the church at the 15-minute mark, which is page 14, he snatches one of the figurines off the table. Now, I heard a theory online that Cole collects the figures for every ghost he encounters, and because he's just met a new one, he grabs a new figure for his collection. This also casts a bit more light on that one figure that speaks Latin, as it potentially means that one of the ghosts that Cole encounters is able to speak Latin. The B-plot, which is Malcolm and Anna's fractured marriage, is then introduced at the 15-minute and 20-second mark, which is on pages 14 to 15 in the script. This is also where he tries to get into the basement for the first time, but can't. You can also see here that the basement is now full of his stuff, whereas at the start of the film, the basement was empty. So it kind of begs the question, why is all of his work stuff now in the basement? Then at the 16-minute 45-second mark, which is page 16 in the script, Malcolm translates Cole's Latin sentence that he said when he was playing with his figures, and it basically translates to a cry for help. Then at the 17-minute and 15-second mark, which is page 17 in the script, we are introduced to Cole's mum, Lynn, a hard-working single mum who cares deeply for her son. This scene is also the first time we get a glimpse into anything supernatural that's going on, as Cole could never have opened all of these doors by himself. Tommy then calls him a freak at the 19-minute and 35-second mark, which is page 19 in the script.
Hey freak, how'd you like that arm around the shoulder bit?
This is the first time that word is used in connection to Cole, which draws a direct link to Vincent. And at the 20-minute mark, which is page 20 in the script, we see Cole being very cautious about going into the school. I'll come back to why this might be later on, but he seems very apprehensive about going into the building. Also, just as a wee side note here, so far, the whole 1 page of screenplay equaling 1 minute of screen time is panning out pretty much exactly on the nose. We then see a further lack of communication at the 20-minute and 35-second mark, which is page 20 in the script, when Cole comes home from school and Lynn tries to engage with him, and he just doesn't say anything.
You know, you can tell me things if you need to.
She then tries to make him feel better by making up a little story about what happened in her day.
I won the Pennsylvania lottery in the morning. I quit my jobs. And I ate a big picnic in the park with lots of chocolate mousse pie. And then I swim in the fountain all afternoon. What do you do?
Which shows she is a good mum who's just trying to interact with this troubled little boy who she doesn't really know how to deal with. This leads to Cole making up a little story about his day.
I was picked first for kickball teams at recess. I hit a grand slam to win the game. Everybody lifted me up on their shoulders and carried me around cheering.
Remember this, because I'll come back to it later on. Malcolm then tries to engage with Cole at the 21-minute and 55-second mark, which is pages 21 to 22 in the script, by playing a game with him that involves Malcolm reading his mind. And if he gets something right, then Cole has to take a step forward towards the chair. But if he gets something wrong, he can take a step back towards the door. This leads to Malcolm guessing that Cole has a secret.
You have a secret, but you don't want to tell me.
And he confirms this by stepping forward. Cole then goes on to tell a story about him drawing a disturbing image at the 25-minute and 30-second mark, which is page 23 in the script, and how it made people upset.
We were supposed to draw a picture. Anything we wanted. I drew a man. Got hurt in the neck by another man with a screwdriver.
So he decided not to draw like that anymore.
Everyone got upset. They had a meeting. Mom started crying. I don't draw like that anymore.
This is just another example of him hiding, suppressing himself to appease those around him. Shortly after this, Cole asks Malcolm what he's thinking, and Malcolm, dropping all the games, all the facades, just says he doesn't know.
What am I thinking now?
I don't know what you're thinking now.
And Cole goes on to say,
I was thinking, you're nice. But you can't help me.
this is him just running away again and hiding, not accepting the help that Malcolm is trying to give. Malcolm then starts to theorise about Cole's secret at the 26-minute and 50-second mark, which is page 25 in the script, thinking it's some kind of abuse, comparing him to Vincent, while also falling into the same trap of trying to label and diagnose him.
They're both so similar. Same mannerisms, same expressions, same things hanging over their head. I think it might be some kind of abuse.
This then leads to him mentioning how helping Cole will give him a second chance.
I know that I've been a little distant. I know that it makes you mad. I just feel like I'm being given a second chance and I don't want it to slip away.
Which pushes forward his redemption arc, but it's at the cost of his marriage. He's still putting his work above her. So he's basically prioritising the A plot at the cost of the B plot. And at the 28-minute and 10-second mark, we fade to black into our first deleted scene, which happens between pages 26 and 28. I'm just going to let it play in full here. They do borrow some dialogue from the deleted scene in the finished film about him not wanting to be looked at. So when the deleted scene finishes, you'll hear that repeated. The line is quite important as it reinforces Cole's desire not to be seen, to hide away.
What happened to these two guys under the tissue? Not looking too good.
That's Private Jenkins and Private Kenny. They got killed. Private Jenkins has a baby girl that was born 7 pounds 6 ounces. He's never seen her. He wanted to get back to Bluebell, Pennsylvania and hold her. Private Kenny's wife is mighty sick. She has something called a brain aneurysm.
You mean an aneurysm?
Private Kenny needed to get back safe and take care of her. Except they died instead. Don't look at me. I don't like when people look at me like that. Stop looking at me.
Where would you like me to look, Cole?
Look over there.
Is it okay if I look back now, Cole? Tap once for no and twice for yes if you want. You wouldn't want to go for a walk, would you?
Stop looking at me. I don't like when people look at me like that.
M. Night Shyamalan's reason for cutting it is because it shows too much at this stage, apparently. That Cole has too much knowledge for such a young kid, which I do kind of agree. Like, I can see where he's coming from, but I honestly think it would have worked really well. I think it would have played into the mystique of who this little kid is, because it is a really beautiful scene and is really well acted. Cole then calls himself a freak at the 28-minute and 55-second mark, which is page 29 in the script.
Because she doesn't look at me like everybody else, and I don't want her to. I don't want her to know
Know what?
that I'm a freak.
Malcolm might as well be looking at Vincent when he says this,
You are not a freak.
because it's just a reminder of how he failed him. This causes him to
You
swear,
believe anybody that tries to convince you of that. That's bullshit.
which I think is quite a nice bonding moment for them. I think the way that Malcolm responds causes Cole to start to trust him, because it's similar to the way that his mum responds when he calls himself a freak. This then leads to our next lead scene at around the 29-minute and 30-second mark, which is pages 29 to 33 in the script. In the film, the scene hard cuts right after Malcolm says sorry, but in the script, we get more. I'll let it play in full again.
Sorry.
It's okay if I do something, I have to do something. Hi, Mr. Marshall.
Guten Tag, Cole. Mrs. Marshall, she went food shopping. She's running late.
Ich habe Durst.
Wunderbar. Where did you learn to speak German?
I just know a couple lines.
Yes, you may have a drink. What would you like?
Lemonade, please. Mr. Marshall gets real lonely.
What about Mrs. Marshall?
She died a long time ago.
Maybe Jill will play for us when she comes back.
Thank you.
This? Jill kept me diary.
April or March 1987, 2 weeks into sessions with Vincent Gray. I was treating a young couple, Donald and Robin Wagner, who had lost a young child to leukemia. They were waiting with Vincent in the reception room of the downtown clinic. They were alone for about 15 minutes. When I entered the room, all three were crying. The Wagner's progress following that afternoon was dramatic and sudden, as if a door had been opened for them. I'm not at all clear what happened in those 15 minutes. But I now believe Vincent was trying to tell me something, show me something. And I didn't listen. Cole Shear allowed me to witness something today. This time I'm going to listen.
I think M. Night Shyamalan's reason was similar to the previous deleted scene in that it gives Cole too much knowledge at this point in the film. But in all honesty, even though it's a really nice scene, I think it undercuts the message of the film, as Cole needs to learn to help the ghosts. That's the reason that Malcolm is there, to help Cole accept his gift. But if he's already doing that, then what does he need to learn in the film? Also, something potentially worth mentioning, the thing that Malcolm said at the very end about how he's going to listen to Cole because he didn't listen to Vincent is something that he needs to learn, but it's possibly too early in the film for him to realise that. So it wouldn't really make sense to have that at this point in the film. Lynn then looks at a wall of photos, mainly of Cole, and notices a small light next to him in all of them. This is a further suggestion that something supernatural may be happening with him, that there's been a presence with him his whole life. But it could also be another indication towards his absent father, who isn't in any of the photos, that even though he's not there, his presence is still felt. So now we have quite a big editing change. The next two scenes here play out pretty much the same in both the film and the script, but in the script they happen back to back, so they unfold in full, one after each other, whereas in the film they intercut back and forth. The first cut in the film is at the 30-minute and 35-second mark. Instead of cutting to Cole's room, the voiceover starts and we dissolve to Malcolm with Cole. So I'll jump ahead in the script.
So your dad lives in Pittsburgh with a lady that works in a toll booth.
What if she has to pee when she's working?
The dialogue here on page 36 starts with addressing the dad, which I think is quite fitting, seeing as we've just come from Lynn looking at photos with the dad being missing. I think, if you haven't seen the film, not knowing the twist up until this point is basically just been a bit of an eerie family drama where Cole is having a hard time with his dad leaving. I think that's what Malcolm is gearing up towards in his assessment. Then at the 31-minute and 15-second mark, we jump back to the house with Lynn, but I'm going to keep the conversation from the script on the screen so we can compare them, because the voices from Malcolm and Cole continue over the top of Lynn cleaning Cole's room. This is shortly followed by Cole's admission of not wanting to be scared anymore.
If you could change something in your life, anything at all, what would it be?
Instead of something I want, can it be something I don't want?
Okay.
I don't want to be scared anymore.
So basically, in the story, he wants to get rid of his ability to see ghosts. He doesn't want to be scared anymore. But what he needs to do is he needs to learn that his ability is a gift, and he needs to use that gift to help the ghosts, and in turn, accept himself fully and stop hiding. So now we'll track back and we'll read the description of the room in the script that was happening underneath the voiceover in the film. At the 31-minute and 15-second mark, which is page 34 in the script, Lynn heads into Cole's room, and it's described in the script as an eerie place with shadows that make shapes and figures, and all the furniture is wood and old-fashioned. But as you can see, we just see a very normal kid's bedroom. Lynn then goes on to find a framed photo on Cole's bed. It's of Lynn and, what we can gather, Cole's dad. We linger briefly before moving on, whereas in the script it's a bit of a bigger moment. It reads, Lynn slowly reaches for a picture frame that peeks out from under Cole's pillow. Slides it out. It's a vacation photo of a couple, Lynn and Cole and a man. The man looks in every way a larger version of Cole. The picture has a visible effect on Lynn. She lets out a shaky breath before returning the photo to its hiding place. Shortly after this, we see the free writing exercises that Malcolm is talking about in the voiceover.
Have you ever done any free association writing, Cole?
And they possibly point to Cole being disturbed in some way. I honestly think it was a really clever idea, cutting back and forth instead of having these scenes play back to back. Seeing the photos on the wall with the absent dad and then seeing it be addressed in the conversation, then speaking about the free writing and seeing the free writing is a lot more impactful, and it just goes to show that things don't need to happen exactly as they're written. There's a short scene at the 33-minute mark, which is on page 38, that both forwards the B-plot while also pushing forward the themes of not communicating with each other. The scene starts pretty much the same, but with a very slight change. So in the film, Malcolm hears the door being knocked and he shouts out to Anna if she's going to get it, which she doesn't reply to.
Are you gonna get that?
whereas in the script, Malcolm hears Anna's voice and asks, "Are you calling me?" So even though they play out slightly differently, they represent the same thing, just a lack of communication between the two of them. We also hear Anna speaking to a man at the door, which starts to put that seed in your mind of, is she cheating or going to cheat on Malcolm? Or is this guy trying to make a move on Anna?
Keep moving, cheese dick.
At the 35-minute and 30-second mark, which is page 41 in the script, we have the scene where the teacher asks a question to the class and Cole raises his hand to answer it. Now the teacher looks surprised by this.
Yes, Cole.
So it's clearly an odd occurrence, but we could also see it as a development for Cole, that he's finally putting himself out there for the first time, showing that his time with Malcolm is starting to help. Cole's answer to the question that the building was used to hang people
They used to hang people here.
sets up a moment for later on in the film, but the teacher disagrees with this answer, giving him a condescending look. This, along with being stared at by all the other students, drives him right back into his shell of not wanting to be seen.
I don't like people looking at me like that.
This leads to him showing knowledge that he shouldn't have at the 37-minute and 20-second mark, which is page 43 in the script, when he calls the teacher a hurtful name that he had from his childhood.
You're a stuttering Stanley.
This results in the teacher calling Cole a freak, which is the thing that Cole fears the most, because that's how he feels about himself, and he assumes that everyone else feels the same. So this just validates his negative self-image.
Shut up, you freak!
After this, we then have the magic trick scene at the 39-minute and 20-second mark, which is page 45 in the script, where Malcolm does a stupid magic trick with a penny that isn't even a magic trick, just to try and cheer him up. I think it's quite a nice little bonding moment between the two of them. In the film, it ends just after Cole says, "I didn't know you were funny."
I didn't know you were funny.
Whereas in the script, it goes on a little bit longer. It reads, "Cole, I didn't know you were funny. Malcolm, I forgot myself." Malcolm and Cole share a warm look. The sounds of kids' laughter and playing out in the field come pouring into the room again. Cole's expression changes back to sadness as he looks to the windows. Malcolm leans across the table and whispers, "Malcolm, Cole." Cole looks at Malcolm. "Malcolm, one day you're going to sound just like them." Cole's chin starts to tremble. His voice cracks. "Cole, promise?" Malcolm whispers, "Promise." Malcolm and Cole sit in silence and listen to the sound of children playing. I'm not sure why they got rid of this. It was maybe a bit too on the nose or a bit cheesy, but it does set up a moment for later on in the film, which I'll point out when it happens. So just bear that in mind, that there was that extra bit of dialogue in the script that wasn't in the film. We then have another little B-plot scene at the 39-minute and 20-second mark, which is page 46 in the script. It starts with the wedding video playing. Now, this is a recurring thing throughout the film, where the wedding video will just be playing in the background, and I think before you know what's going on in the film, you're supposed to assume that Anna is just reminiscing about the past, and that she's sad that her marriage is falling apart, but there's obviously more going on, which I'll address at the end of the film. This then leads to Malcolm seeing Anna's antidepressants, so things in his mind are maybe worse than what he thought they were. We then have him trying to get in the basement again, but he can't. This then takes us to the party scene. Cole then overhears a conversation that his mum is having in the kitchen at the 42-minute and 20-second mark, which is pages 49 to 50. In the film, this section ends just after Lynn mentions about the party at Chuck E. Cheese, and then Cole sees a balloon and falls upstairs.
Last time was a Chuck E. Cheese party a year ago. He hid in one of those purple plastic tunnels and didn't come out.
Chuck E. who?
Cheese. It's a kid's place. Excuse me. Sorry.
Whereas in the script, it goes on for a little bit longer. It reads, Darren's mum, Chuck E. who? Lynn, Cheese is a kid's place. Darren's mum smiles formally and turns to give the catering people instructions on how to lay out the food on her sterling silver trays. Lynn, he's my whole life. Darren's mum turns back to Lynn, the forced smile on her face. Lynn, I work at an insurance place and at Penny's, so Cole can go to that good school. Darren's mum, JC Penny's? Lynn nods yes. Darren's mum, bullshit. Good for you. Lynn, I wish I could be like my mama though. She always knew what was wrong, knew just what to say. Darren's mum glances at her expensive watch. Lynn, Cole's going through something bad. He won't talk to me. I'm his mama. Emotional. And I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what to say. Lynn drowns in her thoughts. Cole moves away from the kitchen with sad eyes. I'm not sure why they would have gotten rid of this. I think maybe it just goes on a wee bit too long. You could also argue that her talking about her job is them trying to justify how they can afford Cole going to a fancy school. But I honestly think that no one would question that. You're not going to watch the film and think, why is he going to this school when the family's struggling financially? So I feel like it was maybe an unnecessary bit of exposition, but the stuff about her comparing herself to her mum is relevant because that's something that is a reoccurring thing for her, that she thinks that she's a bad mum and she's doing a bad job and that she wishes that she could be more like her mum, and that does get paid off later on in the film, so it would have been nice for them to keep that. I do think the bit at the end was also maybe unnecessary about her saying that he's going through something bad and they won't talk and she doesn't know what to say, because I think that is kind of obvious from other things in the film. So again, it feels like a bit of an unnecessary exposition. After this conversation, things are very slightly different. In the script, Cole just walks down a hallway, whereas in the film, he follows a balloon up the stairs, which I think is far more cinematic. There's also a slight difference with the crawl space. In the script, it reads, Cole turns a corner and comes to a dead stop. He turns white as he stares at an open crawl space closet a few feet away. Cole's eyes are riveted in the darkness of the closet, whereas in the film, we actually hear a voice from coming inside the closet.
Is someone out there? Open this door, please. Come on. I can't breathe. If you can hear me, open this door. I swear on my life I didn't take the master's horse. Open this door, I'll break through it and grab you!
After Cole gets forced into the crawl space by Tommy and his friend, which happens pretty much exactly the same in the script as it does in the film, the way the scene ends is slightly different in the script compared to the film. In the script, it says that all the kids and the parents, including Lynn, run towards the sound of screaming, with Darren's mum asking what the noise is, whereas in the film, it's Lynn that hears it first and goes to find them before everyone else does, which I think is way more fitting and goes in more in line with her character. This sequence is slightly more extended in the film than in the script. In the script, she basically gets there and pulls him out of the closet, then asks for help to get him in the car. Whereas in the film, she wrestles with the door, but it's locked, and then it eventually opens from the inside, and then she pulls him out. We then have the dialogue from the doctor overlapping with the end of the scene, which doesn't happen in the script, but acts as a transition to take us over to the hospital at the 45-minute and 25-second mark, which is page 53 in the script.
The test would indicate he did not have a seizure.
So shortly after this, when the doctor mentions about there being scratches and bruises on Cole,
There's some cuts and bruises on your son that are concerning me.
things play out slightly different in the film compared to the script. There are some missing lines and the dialogue is shuffled round in a different order. So the way it reads in the script is, Lynn, those are from sports, from playing. Lynn, he's not the most coordinated kid, but I don't want him to stop trying, you know what I mean? Dr. Hill gestures to the woman standing near the doorway. Dr. Hill, Mrs. Sloan over there is our social worker at the hospital. She's going to ask you some procedural questions. Lynn, you think I hurt my child. You think I'm a bad mother. Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
Yeah, those are from sports. You think I hurt my child? You think I'm a bad mother?
Mrs. Sloan over there? She's a social worker with the hospital. And she's going to ask you a couple procedural questions.
After this, there is quite a bit of missing dialogue from the script that doesn't appear in the film, so it reads, Dr. Hill, at this point it's just procedure, and you should probably calm down. Malcolm, how do you expect her to react? Lynn, you want me to answer your questions? Dr. Hill, sarcastic. I'm sorry if I was being vague. Yes, I do. Lynn, who's going to answer mine, you dick? Dr. Hill stares at her before closing his files. Lynn, raising her voice, what happened to my child today? Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
And she's going to ask you a couple procedural questions.
What happened to my child today? Something was happening to him, physically happening. Something was very wrong.
So I think it's pretty obvious why they got rid of that dialogue, because it's just so unnecessary and would be very out of place having lines like these would undercut the tone of the scene because she worries about being a bad mother. That's her big fear throughout the whole film, is feeling like she is failing Cole. So to have a doctor suggest that she is a bad mother is quite heartbreaking. I also heard a funny thing that M. Night Shyamalan didn't like his performance, so he cut as much as he could out. So maybe that's also part of the reason that they got rid of it. Then there's a fun little Easter egg at the 47-minute and 35-second mark, which is on page 56, when Malcolm is telling Cole a story, and Cole says,
This was a very long trip.
Dr. Crow, you haven't told bedtime stories before.
Not too many, no.
We have to add some twists and stuff.
This should flag to us that there are twists in the story that we are currently watching. Then at the 48-minute and 10-second mark, which is on page 56, there's another refusal to communicate when Cole asks him to tell a story about why he's sad, and Malcolm replies,
I'm not supposed to talk about stuff like that.
which makes Cole visibly sad. So Malcolm decides to open up by telling him a story about himself, finally starting to communicate and bridging that gap.
Once upon a time, there was this person named Malcolm.
So Malcolm's story ends slightly differently in the script versus the film at the 49-minute and 50-second mark, which is on page 57. In the script, it reads, he thinks maybe if he can help this boy, it would be like helping that one too. Malcolm leans forward, whispers with emotional eyes, Malcolm, I don't know how the story ends. I hope it's a happy one. Cole, me too. Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
If you can help this new boy, be like helping that other one too.
How does the story end?
I don't know.
I think the film version works better just because it's a bit more raw and real and heartbreaking, and at this point in the film things aren't wrapped up, everything is still a bit up in the air. So I think this version matches the tone and the vibe of the film at this point. This honest expression from Malcolm leads to Cole finally feeling ready to open up.
I want to tell you my secret now.
Which in turn, at the 50-minute and 30-second mark, which is on page 58 in the script, leads to one of the most iconic midpoints of all time.
I see dead people.
So the midpoint of a film usually brings quite a big turning point in the film. If things are going well, this is usually the moment where things go badly, and vice versa. If things are going badly, this is the moment where things appear to go well. So there's usually some kind of false victory, where the protagonist gets what they want, but it's not what they expect. So what Malcolm wanted was to know Cole's secret, or to know what was going on with Cole. And he assumed that it was maybe either some kind of abuse or that he was struggling with his dad leaving, but it's because he can see dead people, and that is not what Malcolm was expecting to hear. This then makes him think that maybe the problem is a lot more psychological. At the 50-minute and 50-second mark, there is a line that's in the film but not in the script. So in the film, the moment plays out like this.
Dead people like in graves, in coffins?
Walking around like regular people. They don't see each other. They only see what they want to see.
Whereas in the script, it reads, Malcolm, dead people, like in graves and coffins. Cole, no, walking around like regular people. They can't see each other. Some of them don't know they're dead. So the line, they see what they want to see, isn't in the script, which is really odd because I feel it's quite an important facet of the ghosts. Malcolm not being able to see the cabinet in front of the basement door, the ghosts not knowing they're dead, not seeing their own wounds, etc. So it makes me think when that line was actually added in. After Cole says this, there's some extra dialogue in the script that doesn't appear in the film. So in the script, Malcolm repeats back the line, they don't know they're dead, then it goes on, and Cole says, I see ghosts. Malcolm becomes completely motionless, works to hide his shock. He and Cole stare at each other a long time. Cole, they tell me stories, things that happen to them, things that happen to people they know. Malcolm's words are extra controlled, revealing nothing. Malcolm, how often do you see them? Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
They don't know they're dead.
How often do you see them?
What Cole said about them telling him stories is quite interesting because it explains a lot of the deleted scenes from earlier, but I do think it suggests that he has a bit more control over it. Like I said earlier, I think it undercuts Cole's arc if he knows too much or interacts with the ghosts in any way. Otherwise, he'd have nothing to learn. So I think it works better if everything feels a bit more chaotic before he gets a handle on it. Also, that line, "I see ghosts," is terrible, especially where it appears in the conversation. It seems to just come out of nowhere. If he said it instead of "I see dead people," it would be kind of fine, but it doesn't really work where it's placed. I heard somewhere that Haley Joel Osment, the actor who plays Cole, improvised the line "I see dead people" early on in the rehearsal stage, and it eventually made it into the script. So if I was to hazard a guess, I'm going to say that "I see ghosts" was the original line that Haley Joel Osment changed, but M. Night Shyamalan kept them both in the script, so they had a choice in the edit. That's just my little theory. This conversation ends slightly differently in the script versus the film. In the script, it reads, "Cole, will you stay here while I fall asleep?" Malcolm nods yes. Cole pulls the covers up to his chin and turns to the window in the room. Malcolm is very still and stares at Cole. Malcolm's eyes slowly turn to survey the room. They find nothing. Malcolm returns to watching Cole. Cole's eyes look around the room warily. We move in on them till his eyes fill the frame. We then see what he's staring at. Through Cole's hospital room window, we see the adjacent wing of the hospital building. Rows of hospital room windows are visible. In the windows are patients, some old, some young, some are dressed in modern hospital gowns, some from decades past. They stand unnaturally still in their windows, watching, waiting. Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
Will you stay here until I fall asleep?
Of course. Cole, his pathology is more severe than initially assessed.
If I was to hazard a guess on why they removed the end of that scene, it would be because it's purely there for shock value. This is something I'm going to address later on, but the ghosts are supposed to be there because they need help. This is the first time we see the ghosts in the film, and it doesn't really serve any purpose, whereas when you actually do see a ghost for the first time, it's quite terrifying. At the end of this tape recording monologue, he says that he's not helping Cole, which we know is false, otherwise Cole wouldn't have opened up to him. Malcolm is just beating himself up because he feels like he's failing another kid. But the problem is, we can see from that tape recording that he is starting to repeat the same mistakes as he did with Vincent, that he is diagnosing and pathologizing. So even though he's started to communicate, he's still failing to listen. Then we have another fade to black as the scene ends, whereas in the script, we have another little section before the scene properly ends, which reads, "Interior car, night. The streets turn red as Lynn drives home from the hospital in silence. Cole is curled up asleep on the passenger seat, back in his regular clothes, a tiny party hat clutched in his hand. He looks like a 4-year-old. The sight of him exhausted and still hits Lynn hard. Lynn's face drowns in deep concern. She lays a hand on Cole's head as she drives. Cut to interior Cole's house, night. The front door opens. Lynn carries Cole in. He's asleep on her shoulder. She carries him down the hall to his bedroom. So in the script, it goes from Malcolm speaking on the recorder to Lynn in the car with Cole curled up in the front seat, then to Lynn carrying Cole through the door into the house. Whereas in the film, it plays like this.
I'm not helping him.
At the 53-minute and 10-second mark, which is page 60 in the script, these stakes are reinforced, as Lynn notices the ripped clothes and the scars on Cole's back, which reminds us that these ghosts can be physically violent towards him, and if he doesn't get help and get under control, it could turn fatal, which comes at the perfect moment, as at the 55-minute and 35-second mark, which is page 62 in the script, we see our first ghost.
No. Dinner is not ready. What are you gonna do?
We see that Cole was telling the truth. He isn't suffering some kind of delusion or having a hard time with losing his dad. He actually can see the dead. At the 56-minute mark, which is page 63 in the script, Cole runs into his sanctuary to get away from the ghost, and we see all the figurines that he's stolen. watching over him, which again, each one could represent a different ghost he's encountered. Now there's a little funny moment at the 56-minute and 25-second mark where during the play every single parent holds up a camera to film their child, and it's a moment that's played for laughs, but if you look at the guy sitting at the back, if Malcolm was actually there, then the guy wouldn't be able to get a clean shot of the stage. So it's just another little Easter egg to show that Malcolm isn't actually there. Also, there's one very small change here on page 63. It says that Cole comes out holding a painted cardboard monkey and Malcolm applauds, but that doesn't happen in the film. I imagine they took that out because a bigger version of that does happen later on, so maybe having it now kind of undercuts that moment later on in the film, whereas having Cole just be completely lost on the stage that you can't even point him out is more fitting for this point in the story. The conversation after the play unfolds pretty much the same in both the film and the script. The only big difference is we get the reveal of the people hanging far earlier in the film, which happens at the 57-minute and 30-second mark, which would be page 65 in the script, but eventually happens on page 66. This explains where Cole got his knowledge of people being hung in the building and why he didn't want to go into the school earlier. A little side note about a moment like this, I addressed this earlier in the I See Dead People scene, how it ended differently in the script versus the film. If he needs to help the ghosts, then what does a moment like this mean? Surely they know that they're dead if they're hanging by their necks. They're not trying to speak to him, or they're not trying to free themselves. It is a horrifying image, but I feel like it's purely there for the scare. It doesn't serve the story. At the start of this video, I mentioned that it gets cold sometimes when ghosts are present. Cole explains that here at the 58-minute and 40-second mark, which is page 66 in the script.
They get mad. It gets cold.
I think this basically translates to when the ghosts are emotional, it gets cold, because there are moments in the film where there are ghosts present and it's cold, but the ghosts aren't necessarily angry. And this also explains why it never gets cold when Malcolm is around, because he's never mad or emotional until the end of the film, but I'll point that out when it happens. After this, there are 2 deleted scenes in the script that don't appear in the film, and it doesn't look like they were ever filmed. They happen between pages 66 and 68, so I'm just going to read them as they appear in the script. Cut to exterior historic Philadelphia, night. Malcolm walks out from the bus stop over the cobblestone streets in front of Head House Square. The streets are quiet and dark. Nighttime has fallen over the city. He slowly comes to a stop in front of an old building. He holds his arm up, uses his other hand to gently touch the hairs on his arm's surface. Malcolm looks up slowly, looks around. The dark shadows fill the corners of the historic building. Malcolm stares into the darkness. Malcolm whispers, "Is anyone there?" A long moment as he waits. The shadows seem to move, then become still. Malcolm shakes off the moment. He returns his hands to his pockets as he moves through the dark streets of Philadelphia to his home. Cut to interior hall, night. The doorway to Malcolm and Anna's bedroom is open. Strained voices spill out into the hallway. Malcolm, off screen. "Look, he's an 8-year-old child. He's my only client. If he invites me to his play, I'm not thinking about how late I get back. I go. I have to go. You know that. That's the only way I know how to work." Vincent said I failed him, raising his voice. "I won't give Cole a chance to say those words to me. I won't." The portable phone rings out in the hall. Malcolm, off screen. "Please let it ring." We hear movement. Anna emerges from the bedroom, eyes raw. She wipes her tears. She picks up the phone and moves down the stairs. Malcolm walks out into the hall, stops at the top of the stairs. Anna's voice can be heard speaking on the phone from downstairs. "Anna, I can't talk now." Malcolm doesn't hear anything as Anna listens to the person on the phone. She smiles as she wipes her tears. He starts for the basement door again. Anna whispers, "I thought about you too." Malcolm turns. He stands frozen at the top of the stairs. Anna's hushed words rising in the air like a gun blast. So I think they got rid of that first part of Malcolm looking into the shadows because he doesn't actually believe Cole yet. He thinks he's suffering from some kind of delusion, so this might have undercut that. Also, I think it's a little bit cheesy, to be honest. The second part, the argument with Anna, I think the thing with that scene is, if you don't know he's a ghost, then it's fine, it works. But when you know he isn't actually there, it feels a bit odd, because it sounds like we're overhearing an argument that's halfway through. It sounds like he's responding to something, which doesn't really make sense. So it's maybe a bit misleading, whereas every other scene with them, they're either separate or Anna's asleep. And I think that feeds into the themes a bit better. You could argue that it is just a one-sided thing, that he's gone in and he's taken her silence as being annoyed and he's just went off on one. It does forward that B-plot of him putting his work above his marriage, stating that that's just how he works. It doesn't matter what time he'll be back because the kids always come first. Reinforcing the fact that he doesn't want to fail Cole like he did Vincent. He doesn't want Cole to say that to him, which actually comes back later on in the film because Cole does say that to him. So this could have been a nice little setup for that. I just don't think the scene's necessary. So if we now go back to the film, after the hanging scene, there's a nice little filler scene with Cole and Lynn at the supermarket, with Cole sitting in the trolley. But this doesn't happen until later on in the script, so I'll address it more when it happens there. So the scene that starts with the child actor on TV at the 60-minute and 40-second mark, which is page 69 in the script, we see Cole wearing his dad's gloves, and Lynn tells him to take them off.
Take them off.
This is just another sign of the vacant dad. There's a little descriptor line in the script about this, which reads, Lynn is irritated. This is a sore spot between them, which suggests that Lynn doesn't like seeing Cole wearing her ex's clothes, but Cole continues to do so. This then leads to them talking about the bumblebee pendant at the 61-minute and 5-second mark, which is also on page 69.
I saw what was in your bureau drawer when I was cleaning. Got something you want to confess? The bumblebee pendant? Why do you keep taking it? It was Grandma's. You know, what if it broke? You know how sad I'd be.
You'd cry because you miss Grandma so much.
That's right.
This is a setup for a moment later on in the film, but it's also another mention of Lynn's connection to her mum. I mentioned earlier on in this video that one of the biggest ghosts in the film is Cole's absent father, and you could say that Lynn's ghost is her absent mother because of how much she misses her and how strong their connection was. The themes of not communicating with each other are reinforced when Cole refuses to say that he took the pendant at the 62-minute and 55-second mark, which is on pages 70 to 71 in the script.
If we can't talk to each other, we're not going to make it. Now tell me, baby. I won't get mad, honey. Did you take the bumblebee pendant?
No.
But he also refuses to tell her who did. The themes then continue to develop later on in the scene, at the 64-minute and 10-second mark, which is page 72 in the script, where after Cole sees another ghost, he goes to his mum for help, but he still isn't willing to speak to her.
Baby, why are you shaking? Cole, what's wrong? Oh, God. Please tell me. Oh, please.
Now we have this scene in the antique shop, where Anna is selling a piece of jewellery to a young couple. At the 66-minute mark, which is on page 74, she goes on to say,
I think maybe when people own things and then they pass away, a part of themselves gets printed on those things. Like fingerprints.
Take a note of this moment where she mentions about part of someone being imprinted on something, because I'll come back to it later on. Then, Anna and Sean's moment together leads to Malcolm breaking the window out of anger. This is him hitting his lowest moment. Just a little side note, I think he can break the window because he's so heightened emotionally, and we know that ghosts can interact with this world. We know that because they hurt Cole, so I think this is just an extension of that. This then leads to quite a drastic difference between the film and the script, so I'll put a pin in the film for now and just continue reading the script until we catch back up with the film. Then I'll circle back to the film and address things from there. So in the script, after Malcolm smashes the window and walks away, we now have the supermarket scene from earlier. Like I say, it's a nice bonding moment, a little bit of levity. But in the script, the scene continues, it keeps going. So after the trolley scene, it reads, interior car, day. Cole and Lynn ride home with a back seat full of groceries. Cole finishes off a cherry popsicle as he watches out the window. Lynn looks over. Lynn, let's rent a movie. Cole bites off the last of the popsicle and glances at his mum. Lynn, your pick. Cole stares at his mum quietly. Lynn, it can even have Jean-Claude Van Damme in it if you want. Cole smiles at that. He nods, yes, joyfully. His smile fades away as he notices his mother fiddling with the heater controls. Cole gazes out the front windshield as the car moves towards home. Suddenly a piece of paper sticks to the windshield. It's a page from a playbill, a 1941 playbill. It flies away, revealing a woman in a flowing flowery dress from the 40s suddenly walks into the middle of the street as the pages of her playbill swirl in the air. Cole yells, "Mama, look out!" The woman in the flowery dress turns. Her hand rests on her stomach. We see she's pregnant. Playbills stick to the windshield, obstructing the view. Lynn slams the brakes. Too late. The woman smashes into the front grille of the car. Her terror-stricken face comes over the hood and crashes right through the windshield in a shower of blood and glass. Cole screams. Lynn screams. The car screeches to a stop in the middle of a congested intersection. The line of cars behind him suddenly hit their brakes and swerve to one side, avoiding a mass collision. After a few seconds, the entire intersection has come to a halt. Cole, who has shut his eyes, slowly opens them. He looks around fearfully. His eyes move to the windshield. No broken glass, no blood, and no woman. Cole looks out through the pristine windshield onto the street where cars are stopped and staring all around them. Cole slowly looks over to his mother. He finds her staring at him in complete and utter disbelief. Her hands clutch the wheel, the whites of her knuckles showing her fear. She has no idea why he screamed. So, that's quite something, isn't it? I imagine they cut that primarily for ratings reasons. It is quite extreme compared to anything else that's in the film. But also, when I think about it, it feels different to every other ghost or scare in the film. It feels almost like a dream or like a premonition. Like, at no other point in the film do we have something happening and then there's no evidence for it. We know that the ghosts can interact with the world, so if they harm Cole, we see it, or Malcolm can smash a window. So to have something as extreme as this happening, it doesn't really make sense with anything else that happens in the film. These scares and the ghosts tend to follow a certain logic. Like I've said, the only time that it goes against the logic is when it seems to be purely there for a scare, and that's a bit innocuous, like it doesn't really matter, whereas this feels like it breaks that logic in quite an extreme manner. So maybe that's why they got rid of it, but I imagine it's more for the ratings reasons. So the scene in the den between Cole and Malcolm, which starts on pages 77 into 78, is when the film and the script start to line back up. Now we track back to the antique shop just before Malcolm smashes the window, because the dialogue from here starts to overlap with that scene.
What do you want more than anything?
I don't know.
I told you what I want.
I know what I want. I want to be able to talk to my wife again.
I think this way of editing the scenes is far more effective, as you see Anna almost cheating from Malcolm's perspective, and then you hear him saying how much he just wants to reconnect with her, so it packs a harder punch, which reinstates the themes and pushes the B-plot forward. Now the film and the script have caught up with one another. Hopefully all of that made sense, and it wasn't too confusing jumping back and forth. Okay, so this scene between Cole and Malcolm is quite important thematically, but there's also quite a few objective differences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over it and show the differences first, then I'll go back and break it down thematically. If I try and do it at the same time, it'll just get messy and confusing. So firstly, at the 68-minute mark, which is page 78 in the script, after Malcolm tells him he can't be his doctor, there's a few lines that are missing from the film that appear in the script. So it reads, "I can't be your doctor anymore. I haven't given my family enough attention. Bad things happen when you do that. Do you understand?" The room falls into silence again. Cole speaks extra soft. "Cole, you want to go home?" Malcolm stares across at Cole. "Malcolm, I have to." Cole, "When?" Malcolm, "Soon. 1 week." Malcolm looks down, his eyes full with emotion. "Malcolm, I'm going to transfer you." Whereas in the film, it plays out like this.
Can't be your doctor anymore. I haven't paid enough attention to my family. Bad things happen when you do that. Do you understand? I'm going to transfer you.
I think that word home that Cole uses is his way of saying, are you going to disappear? Or are you going to go to heaven? Or wherever ghosts go. He uses it a few times in the script, but I don't think he really says it in the film. It may be something that I'm just overthinking, but it's a fun theory. Then at the 68-minute and 10-second mark, which is page 79 in the script, after Cole says that Malcolm is the only one who can help him, the film and the script deviate quite a bit. In the script it reads, Cole, don't give up, you're the only one who can help me. I know it. Malcolm tries to stay composed. It doesn't work. Malcolm, you want to know a secret? I was a paper champion. Do you know what that means? Cole shakes his head. No. Tears fall down Malcolm's cheeks. Cole, don't cry. Malcolm, it means I wasn't what everyone thought I was. I was a fake. Cole, you weren't a paper champion. Malcolm, someone else can help you. Someone else can make you happy. Whereas in the film, it just plays out like this.
Don't give up. You're the only one who can help me. I know it.
I can't help you. Someone else can help you.
I really don't think they need that paper champion nonsense. It packs a way harder punch and is far more heartbreaking the way it unfolds in the film. But it does play into what I was saying at the start of the video about him, in the script, believing that he isn't good at the job. Alright, now let's go back and unpack that scene. This continues Malcolm's lowest moment from the previous scene, and in turn it makes it Cole's darkest moment as well. Malcolm doubting himself, putting his duties as a doctor and his quest for redemption aside to try and save his failing marriage, and Cole losing the only person who has tried to help and is succeeding. The only person, as far as we know, that Cole has told his secret to. The person he trusts most at this moment is abandoning him. Malcolm is confronted with his flaw that he's spending too much time with Cole, and if he continues his work, he'll lose his marriage. This moment of the film is also usually when we experience the worst outcome of the inciting incident, which happens at the 68-minute mark, which is page 79 in the script, when Cole says,
Don't fail me.
Now, the paper champion stuff isn't good, but it gives us an insight into Malcolm's perspective, that he thinks he can't help him, and that he feels powerless, and that he's not good enough to help, and never was, basically stating out loud that he doesn't believe Cole.
You believe me, right? Dr. Crow, you believe my secret, right?
I don't know how to answer that, Cole.
So, earlier in the film, he was forced between choosing the A plot over the B plot. Now he's choosing the B plot over the A plot. This scene mirrors the mind-reading scene from earlier, in two different ways. Firstly, in the content of the scenes, as now Cole is begging for Malcolm's help, whereas back then, it was Malcolm who was desperate to help Cole.
You're nice. But you can't help me. Don't give up. You're the only one who can help me. I know it.
And secondly, in the way that it's shot. In the earlier scene, they primarily use wider lenses, which gives a sense of detachment. They also only use single shots, so the both of them don't appear in the same shot together, which makes it feel quite disconnected. Whereas in this scene, the shots are far closer up, making it feel more personal, and they share the same space, which shows they've closed the distance, and they're now closer than ever, which makes things even more heartbreaking. So it's a total reversal on all fronts for Malcolm. The scene with Malcolm in the basement listening to Vincent's tape recordings at the 69-minute mark, which is on pages 80 to 81 in the script, goes on slightly longer and is a bit different in the film compared to the script. In the script, it reads, Malcolm, on the tape. Sorry about that. Hope I didn't leave you alone too long. Wow, it's cold in here. We hear a chair move as Malcolm sits down, and then silence. Malcolm, Vincent, why are you crying? Vincent? A 10-year-old's voice answers. Vincent? Yes? Malcolm, what happened? Did something upset you? Vincent sniffles. Vincent, you won't believe. Malcolm, I won't believe what? Vincent, I don't want to talk anymore. I want to go home, okay? Vincent, I want to go home. Malcolm, okay Vincent, you can go home. Whereas in the film, it's far shorter.
I'm sorry about that, Vincent. I hope I didn't leave you alone too long. It's cold in here. Vincent, why are you crying?
You won't believe.
Vincent wanting to go home. That word again, home, which Cole uses, which I mentioned earlier on in this video. There could be something in that. If it's used in the same way that I believe Cole used it in the script, is this the first time that Vincent showed some kind of self-harm ideation and Malcolm just didn't pick up on it? I might also be reading into that quite a bit, and they did cut it out of the film, so read into it what you will. But we also see Malcolm not pushing back on Vincent wanting to go home, even if home does just mean he wants to leave the session. He doesn't really attempt to get Vincent to stay, so he could have helped more, which again feeds the idea that he isn't actually good at his job, in the script anyway. And at the 72-minute mark, which is page 83 in the script, Malcolm hears... He's beginning to believe. Malcolm hears the ghost's voice on the tape, which changes everything. Maybe Cole is telling the truth. This moment acts as our second plot point, which is the event that pushes us towards the third act. And then on page 83 we have our second deleted scene with Mr. Marshall. This acts as a nice little moment that shows Malcolm that Cole was able to help Mr. Marshall, which in turn prompts Malcolm to go back to Cole with the idea that maybe the ghosts are here for a reason and he needs to help them. But that doesn't appear in the film, so I think we're supposed to just assume that he came up with the plan after hearing the ghost on the tape recorder and then he came straight to Cole to tell him. At the 72-minute and 15-second mark, which is on page 84 in the script, we go into Act 3. He does this by coming back to Cole to make amends for leaving him and with a new plan on how to help. There's a really interesting descriptive line in the script after Cole says,
Want to be a Lance Corporal in Company M 3rd Battalion 7th Marines? We're being dispatched into the Quang Nam province.
It then reads in the script. Cole holds up his plastic rifleman. Malcolm's eyes show he understands now. This is a reference to that deleted scene where Cole showed knowledge beyond his years when he was describing the lives and backstories of the figures that he was playing with. And Malcolm now knows where he gets that knowledge from, and I think this is the moment that Cole also realises that Malcolm now believes him. They then establish a new plan at the 73-minute and 40-second mark, which is page 86 in the script.
What do you think they want?
Just help.
That's right. That's what I think too. They just want help, even the scary ones.
Which involves Cole trying to help the ghosts instead of hiding from them. This plan pushes the themes forward and pulls Cole out of the shadows, forcing him to communicate. Then, after Malcolm says that he knows how to make them go away, and Cole asks how, there's a really great lesson in less is more. So, the way that Malcolm responds in the script reads, Malcolm, I think they know you're one of those guys, rare people can see them. You need to help them, each one of them. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone. Whereas in the film, this is how that moment plays out.
I think I might know a way to make them go away.
How?
Listen to them.
It's so simple and works so much better. The script version is so overwritten and unnecessary. It's succinct, to the point, and packs way more of a punch. Then Cole's response to this reinforces the stakes, as it shows his concerns and worries that if he engages them, they could get even more violent and hurt him even more.
What if they don't want to help? What if they're just angry and they just want to hurt somebody?
I don't think that's the way it works.
How do you know for sure?
I don't.
So they don't know if the plan will work, but it's their only choice at this moment. There's a short scene at the 74-minute and 10-second mark, which is on page 87 in the script, that forwards the B-plot, where as Malcolm approaches his house, he sees Sean coming out, with the implication being that something has happened between him and Anna, but we don't know what. In the film, that's where the scene ends, but in the script, it keeps going. It reads, Interior house, night. Malcolm stands in his foyer. Anna is sitting on the stairs, phone in hand. She faces away from the front. Malcolm's a ball of tension as he listens to Anna talk into the phone. Anna, you just walked out. You're probably on your way home. I'm leaving this message. I just didn't get to say what I meant. I know you're confused. It's just, I'm not prepared to do this, Sean. I don't want to be ashamed of that. I don't want to have to make excuses for that. And I wanted to tell you, I bought your present wholesale from a friend. I didn't even pay tax on it. You don't need someone cheap like that. By the way, it's a non-refundable item. It's scratched on the bottom. Are you smiling? I hope you're smiling. I'll see you at the store. A long silence, then we hear Anna hang up. Malcolm leans back against the radiator. His eyes close as the sound of his wife's footsteps rise up the stairs. I imagine they got rid of that scene because it kind of undercuts the previous scene, where it's supposed to be a bit of a mystery as to what happened between Sean and Anna. And at this point in the film, tensions are supposed to be at their highest. Things are supposed to be at their absolute worst. And having this conversation, which kind of confirms that nothing happened, undercuts that tension. At the 75-minute and 10-second mark, which is page 88 in the script, Lynn shouts out for Cole in her sleep, and Cole jumps up to go check on her, inadvertently knocking over his refuge in the process. When he comes back, he can see his breath, and he rushes to rebuild his fort, but something may have already found its way inside. This then leads to probably the most famous ghost interaction in the whole film, at the 76-minute and 20-second mark, which is page 90 in the script. It does unfold slightly differently in the film versus the script. So in the script it reads, interior, tent, night. When Cole turns round, he stops breathing. An 8-year-old girl vomits on herself in his tent. She finishes and looks up at Cole with drawn eyes. Girl. I'm feeling much better now. The girl reaches out with her withered and emaciated hands. Tiny tubes hang from her wrists. She scratches Cole. As he tumbles back, terrified, out the tent, the whole tent collapses. Whereas in the film, it plays out like this. I much prefer the film version. The build-up of the pegs pinging off that leads down to the reveal of the girl is just perfect. He then has a moment of weakness where the fear takes over and he runs away like he normally does. But then, after hiding for a little bit, he decides to put the plan into action. And at the 77-minute mark, which is pages 90 to 91, instead of continuing to hide, he finally confronts his fear by approaching the girl and putting Malcolm's theory to the test.
I'm feeling much better now.
Do you want to tell me something?
I think it's quite poignant that this moment happens in his collapsed hiding spot, as he has to search through the rubble of his refuge in order to find the ghost that needs help. That something new has been born out of the destruction of his sanctuary. Cole and Malcolm then head off on a journey to help the girl at the 78-minute and 10-second mark, which is page 91 in the script, putting the plan into action, further showing that Cole is starting to grow. This scene starts drastically different in the script compared to the film. In the script it reads, interior public bus, day. A downtown SEPTA public bus. Malcolm and Cole are among the spattering of passengers. They're both wearing suits. Cole leans his head against the glass of the scratched window. Cole's large eyes drink in the passing scenery. Cole's POV. A dark, abandoned building stretches for an entire block on one side. A man in a grey, full-bodied uniform with numbers printed across his chest rises out of the tall weeds in front of the building. He hobbles his way desperately towards the bus. His hands and legs are shackled. He lunges out for Cole in the passing window. Shackled man. My name's not Sullivan. A gunshot echoes in the air. The man's chest explodes in red as he falls to his knees screaming. Cole jerks back from the window. The bus quietly drives past the old prison building. Cole stares down at his lap and tries not to look up anymore. Cole. She came a long way to visit me, didn't she? Whereas in the film, it's a lot more stripped back.
Came a long way to visit me, didn't she?
I guess she did.
I think they probably got rid of this because it's quite graphic and traumatic. For a child to see something like that, then just go into a total normal conversation could be quite jarring. Also, like with the deleted scene where the woman goes through the windscreen, this one feels more like a premonition or a vision than being visited by a ghost. Because we see him die, We see him getting shot. So, is he a ghost when he gets shot? Is the person shooting him also a ghost? It just begs a lot of unnecessary questions and could be really distracting to the mission that they're currently embarking on. This leads to them arriving at the girl's house, where there is currently a wake happening. There's a small line here that's said in the background that's worth bearing in mind at the 80-minute and 15-second mark, which is page 93 in the script.
I just heard the little one is falling ill now. God help them.
Where it's said that the younger daughter is now starting to get ill as well. Just put a pin in that, I'm going to bring it back in a minute. The section with Cole and Malcolm standing outside Kira's bedroom at the 80-minute and 40-second mark, which is on page 93 in the script. As Cole opens the door, if you watch closely, there's only one shadow. You could call that foreshadowing. So Cole receives a videotape from the girl. He then gives that tape to the dad, who then watches it and realises that the mum poisoned Kira, and he then goes and confronts her about it.
You were keeping her sick.
This leads to the catharsis of the scene, with Cole consoling Kira's little sister. Cole finally putting his gift into practice, having helped the family understand what happened and gain closure. And if we bring back that line from earlier about the younger daughter starting to get ill, we now know it was the mum that caused it. So Cole has not only avenged Kira, he's saved the younger daughter's life as well. That then brings us to the play scene, which starts with a small deleted scene that was never filmed. After the teacher tells Cole that there was a fire when he was a student, and Cole says he knows, it reads, "Exterior school afternoon. It begins to rain. Malcolm pulls his jacket over his head as he scurries up the stairs of the school." Cut to interior hall afternoon. Malcolm stands and catches his breath in the corridor of St. Anthony's Academy. A teacher rushes in the hall with an armload of costumes. "Malcolm, has the play started yet?" The teacher hurries past Malcolm down the hall without saying a word. "Is that a yes?" The teacher scurries round the corner. Malcolm watches her curiously. Then the play starts. They probably just cut this for time. It's not really necessary, but this is how it plays out in the film, just for reference.
You know, when I went to school here, there was a terrible fire in this section of the theater. They rebuilt the whole thing.
Yeah, I know.
This then leads to Cole, finally front and centre in the play, putting himself out there, no longer hiding, no longer afraid to be seen, showing his growth as a character. He then gets raised up by his classmates. This is a callback to the fake story that he told his mum earlier, about his teammates raising him up after he scores a goal. They then all fall down laughing together. This is also a callback to that moment in the script. After doing the magic trick, Malcolm says that he'll sound like those kids one day. That doesn't appear in the film, but it's a nice moment from the script. We then see Malcolm laughing joyfully at Cole's freedom. Earlier on in the script, at the other scene with the play, in the script, it's mentioned that Malcolm laughs and claps, but it doesn't happen in the film, and I think that was the best choice, because I think if they had done that, it would have undercut the cathartic feel of this moment. The final conversation between Cole and Malcolm starts at the 89-minute and 20-second mark, which is on pages 102 to 103 in the script. There are some trivial differences, and then one major one. I'll start off with the trivial first. Even though all of the dialogue is basically the same, it unfolds quite differently in the film compared to how it's written in the script, due to the fact that it's shuffled round in a different order. In the film, they start by mentioning the play, a nice light-hearted intro to the conversation.
I thought you were really great in the play, Cole.
Really?
Then they move on to addressing the fact that their time is done and they'll not be seeing each other anymore.
I'm not going to see you anymore, am I?
I think we said everything we needed to say.
Which is sad, but Malcolm uses this last moment to push Cole towards finally speaking to his mum.
Maybe it's time to say things to someone closer to you.
Then it ends on a nice, happy, hopeful note with them pretending that they'll see each other again.
Maybe we can pretend like we're going to see each other tomorrow. Just for pretend.
Whereas in the script, it starts off with them addressing the fact that they'll not see each other again. Then they talk about the play. Then they go back and talk about pretending to see each other again. The decision to shuffle the dialogue around like that feels like a choice that was made in the edit. The version in the film just flows so much better than in the script. This scene mirrors their first conversation in the church, how it starts off quite general and progressively gets more personal. Now, the major difference. A line was added in the film that doesn't appear in the script. So, in the film, after they talk about the play, Cole says,
I got an idea how you can talk to your wife. Wait till she's asleep. Then she'll listen to you, and she won't even know it.
This is quite a significant difference, as it feels like such an important line, because the reason they're both there is to help each other. Malcolm is there to help Cole stop hiding, to fully accept himself, and to harness his gift. And Cole is there to help Malcolm resolve his marriage issues and redeem himself for failing Vincent, gaining closure so he can finally move on to the other side. If you watch, you don't actually see Cole's mouth moving, and a lot of it is said over a shot of Malcolm. Also, the audio quality is slightly different, so I imagine it was ADR'd. So yeah, I just wonder when that was added. I wonder when they realised they needed that line, because it is quite an important line thematically. This scene also closes the A-plot, with Malcolm having now helped Cole overcome his fears and also redeemed himself for failing Vincent. At the 92-minute mark, which is page 104 in the script, Cole, showing more growth, takes Malcolm's advice and tells his mum that he's ready to speak to her.
I'm ready to communicate with you now.
Communicate?
Tell you my secrets.
Then at the 93-minute and 35-second mark, which is page 106 in the script, there's a line that's added in the film that isn't in the script. After Cole tells her that he can see and interact with ghosts.
Ghosts.
You see ghosts, Cole?
They want me to do things for them.
He says,
They're the ones that used to hurt me.
him saying that they used to hurt him implies that they don't anymore. So now that he's trying to help them, they've backed off and are no longer violent, which takes away the stakes and shows that the plan worked. Cole isn't on screen when he says it, so I imagine it's maybe another ADR line. The only reason I can think of for them adding this line in is to make it clearer that the plan is actually working. This then leads to the heartbreaking conversation about Lynn's mum, which includes the payoff for the bumblebee pendant.
Grandma says hi. She says she's sorry for taking the bumblebee pendant. She just likes it a lot.
I think there's more references in the script to Lynn talking about and comparing herself to her mum, that Lynn thinks she's a bad mum and she constantly doubts herself, and she wishes that she was more like her mother, because she believed that her mum always had the right answer and always knew what to do, whereas Lynn just feels like she's in a constant chaotic freefall with Cole. So this is a cathartic payoff for Lynn when she finds out that her mum is proud of her.
She said, you came to the place where they buried her. Asked her a question. She said, the answer is every day. What did you ask?
Do I make her proud?
This brings the thematic elements of Cole's story to a close, him now communicating with his mum and helping her find closure. We now have the climax of the entire film, the event that drives us towards the resolution at the 97-minute and 40-second mark, which is page 109 in the script. Anna drops Malcolm's wedding ring. This links back to the antique shop when she was talking about how objects have stories stored in them from the people who owned them. So she was maybe holding onto the ring in an attempt to feel something, because this is then followed by probably one of the most infamous twists in cinematic history.
They don't know they're dead.
He was dead the entire time. Oh my God. So the whole realisation sequence between minutes 97:55 to 100 and pages 110 to 112 play out pretty much the same in the script versus the film. The biggest difference is that in the film there are some flashbacks to Cole telling us about seeing ghosts and that they don't know they're dead, and then there's a few little inserts from various sections in the film, but everything outside of those flashbacks is basically the same. Another very minor difference: instead of there being a chest in front of the door is deadlocked in the script. Now, I get why they added flashbacks. It just makes things hit home a bit harder, and it plays a bit better, and it's just a lot more cinematic. I imagine that was an editing choice, but I'm not sure why they chose a chest instead of a deadlock. I'm sure the first time I saw this film, like 100 years ago, I was a little bit confused at first why there was a chest in front of the door and what that meant, whereas if I saw a padlock or a deadlock, I feel it would have been more obvious, but maybe that was just me being an idiot. Within this sequence, we also see Anna's breath for the first time, which calls back to the scene I mentioned earlier, when Cole speaks about it getting cold around ghosts, and I hypothesised that because Malcolm is never emotional, it doesn't get cold around him. Well, now he's getting all up in his feelings about being dead, things are finally starting to get cold around him. Then with Malcolm telling her she was never second place, at the 101 minute and 15 second mark, which is page 111 in the script.
I needed to tell you something. You were never second. Ever. I love you. You sleep now. Everything will be different in the morning.
His thematic story elements come to a close along with the B-plot, with him taking Cole's advice to speak to her while she sleeps, finally communicating with her. He overcomes his flaw by telling her she's more important than his work. They both get closure, saying goodbye to one another, then it finally fades to white instead of black. That's the payoff for the fade-outs. And with that, at the 102 minute mark and 15 seconds, the film finally ends. But the script continues on with our last deleted scene, which I'll just let play out here, because they actually shot it.
Hi. I would just like to say that this day, today, has been a very special day. And I wish that we could all stay and play. What? Anna, I never thought that I could feel the things that I am feeling right now. I never thought that I could stand up here in front of my friends and my family. And tell you what's inside of me. But I can today. Anna Crow, I am in love. In love I am.
And the script ends on page 113. M. Night Shyamalan said that they got rid of this ending because the fade to white ends on a happy note, whereas the extra section at the end with the wedding video ends on a bit of a downer. Like, I think it's more melancholic than happy. I'm not sure if I completely agree with that, but I do feel that even though that end section is nice, it does feel a little bit tacked on. Pace-wise, I think it makes more sense to end with the fade to white. And lastly, I said I'd mention about Anna watching the wedding video. I think throughout the film we're supposed to assume that she's watching it to reminisce over happier times because her marriage is falling apart. But in actual fact, she's just missing Malcolm and she's watching the wedding video to feel close to him. Then if we transfer everything into pie charts, firstly with the runtime, bearing in mind that the segments are approximates, as it's difficult splitting them up perfectly without the times getting really messy. Then with the page numbers, same with the runtime with the segments being approximates, things are either rounded up or rounded down. And then if we put them side by side, we see that even though the script is slightly longer than the film, they line up pretty closely. But if I added the deleted scenes back into the film, along with all the extra lines and extended scenes, bearing in mind that it's not 100% accurate, I just need to approximate the length, it comes up from around 102 minutes to about 115 minutes. And vice versa, if I remove them from the script, the page count drops from 113 to around 100, making them line up almost perfectly. So 1 page of script equaling 1 minute of screen time for this film pretty much checks out. In an average 3-act script, the first and third act would take up around 25% of the runtime, with the second act taking up 50%. So this is another example of formula not being king, as The Sixth Sense feels quite balanced. I think they need more time in that first half of the second act, as Cole is more of a secondary lead, so they need more time to not only grow the relationship between Cole and Malcolm, but to also establish Cole as a character himself. So it makes sense that they use that fun and games part of the film to build that. The one part of this film that I kept going back and forth on was the first act, as I couldn't accept it only being 10 minutes long, but there just isn't any other moments after he gets shot and before the I see dead people scene that could constitute an act break. It doesn't even work if we see the opening 10 minutes as more of a prologue and then the actual story starts when he meets Cole, because the first act break should put the character into a completely brand new world where there is no way back from, and nothing like that happens for Malcolm after the scene with Vincent. So I feel it only works if the first act break takes us into the main story, and like I mentioned above, the second act is so long to give us time to get to know the two main characters separately, along with establishing the relationship between the two of them. So I think we need to try and not be too formula brained about this type of thing. If it works, it works. Just because it doesn't completely align with a standard formula doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. Every film has form, a beginning, middle and an end, but not every film fits a specific formula of certain events happening by a predetermined page number. But I might be wrong about this. If you have a different read on it, if you think the first act ends somewhere else and I have the moments wrong, then please let me know in the comments and we can have a chat about it. I did really love seeing how different the script is compared to the finished film. As an aspiring filmmaker myself, sometimes after making a film, it can be really disheartening when things don't pan out, or you have to change something in post-production, and you just assume that bigger films are made exactly as they're written. But reading this just shows that that's really not the case. Making a film is an ever-changing and evolving process. The script shouldn't be seen as scripture, and you should let the film be whatever it needs to be. And if that means removing lines or editing something in a different way than was originally planned, then you should let that happen. At the end here, I like to add a little section where I talk about any criticisms I have or discuss anything that I would do differently. And with The Sixth Sense, I'm inclined to say that I would possibly make that first act a little bit longer. Maybe try and embellish Malcolm and Anna's relationship a bit more so we can get more context on how Anna really feels. Because all we get is her saying that he puts his job above her. So I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that, as the entire B plot is based around their growing distance, so it might have been nice to set that up a bit more at the start of the film. Also, the dad subplot never really gets paid off. I don't know if it completely needs to, but with Cole wearing his dad's clothing and feeling his absence so strongly in the first half of the film, it's a shame that it then just gets dropped after the I See Dead People scene. I would have liked to have seen some kind of conclusion to that towards the end of the film. I also forgot to flag the watch that he's wearing. I tried to at least show on screen every time he wore an item of his dad's clothing, but this one just fell through the cracks. I'd already completed the graphics when I noticed it, and it would have been a massive hassle to go back and add it in, so 1000 apologies about that, please forgive me. And then at the end of the film, he comes to terms with his fate very fast, so we could have possibly extended that section a bit more in some way. I'm honestly not too sure what to suggest about that, but he just goes from freaking out about being dead to acceptance very quickly. I think this type of ending worked well with the sentimentality of the 90s, but wouldn't really connect if it was made today. I also think it's quite bittersweet how he never got to tell her that she wasn't second to his job while he was alive, but I think it's implied that she hears him and accepts it. Like, being asleep makes her more susceptible to the message, but maybe he could have written her a note, if ghosts can do that. We know that they can interact with the world, so maybe he could have done that. Or he could have gotten Cole to write it for him. I'm not sure. These are fairly minor notes, so like I say, I think The Sixth Sense feels very balanced, so I don't think these edits are necessary. I'm just trying to add on some discussion points. Lastly, just before we finish, I mentioned up front that I did try and write a version of this video that featured every single difference, both trivial and significant, but decided to remove all the trivial differences so that the video didn't drag too much. This channel is brand new, so I'm still trying to figure out the format of the videos, so I'd like to hear what people think about that. Would you like to hear every single difference mentioned, even the small ones? I did do a version where I included red boxes that would represent every minor difference. I just wouldn't address it verbally, but I ultimately decided against it as I felt it made things look very cluttered and it could potentially confuse things further. But is that something you'd like to see? I'd genuinely love to hear some feedback on this. And just a little disclaimer before we finish. I've tried to find the final draft of whatever screenplay that I'm analysing, but it can be tricky trying to pin down the exact right version, so there may be slightly different versions out there. I'm just doing the best with what I can find. And that's your sixth sense. If you feel like I have any of the moments wrong, or if there's any differences in the script compared to the finished film that I've missed, then please let me know. Also, if there's any films you'd like to see compared in this way, then leave them in the comments below and I'll add them to the list. I'd really appreciate any support, so giving the video a like and a share and subscribing would go a long way in helping the channel grow. And be sure to come back next time, but don't worry, it won't take 500 days to make and it'll definitely be done by summer. Thanks for watching, and remember, try to embrace and accept who you are fully. Put yourself out there for the world to see. Don't hide away, even if you're a bit weird, especially if you're a bit weird. Help those that you're able to help, and speak with your loved ones. And I'll see you again in the next one.